I would even challenge everyone that's listening to this right now. Who would be one person that could completely change your world? Just one. If you have that one, it could alter the course of your life.
For this episode of Coffee with Closers, I'm sitting down with Amanda Holmes, the CEO of Chet Holmes International. She's the daughter of the late Chet Holmes, who wrote the best-selling book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. Stay tuned for my conversation with Amanda, where she shared the concept of a core story and leveraging market data to educate and persuade your buyers. Enjoy the show. Hey, Amanda, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Most certainly. Well, every entrepreneur has an interesting story of how they overcame obstacles to become an entrepreneur. You have an amazing story of how that happened. So can you share with our audience a little bit about that journey?
So my father started the company originally. We've assisted 250,000 businesses worldwide. Been around for 30 years, worked with 60 of the Fortune 500. So a very established organization. And my father unexpectedly passed. It's been about a decade now. And I was a singer prior to that. And when he passed, there was no succession plan. We never had one conversation that was about me taking over the business. And so here I was, 24, with a couple hundred staff, all double, if not triple my age. And I had no idea. I can remember the first night that it was a couple days after his funeral, because I remember all of the flowers around my room. They'd sent me the P&L, and I just remember scrolling across the P&L, millions and millions of dollars, and I had no idea even what all the companies were. I didn't even know what his companies were. So I like broke down in tears. It was a crazy shock. So to go from that to then 2 years later, I stepped in as CEO and doubled our clients 2 years in a row, increased our leads by 1,176%. And it's been 8 years now of wonderful growth, and we're up over 300% this year. And the book hasn't even launched. So lots of good stuff. And definitely it's a miracle that we're here today. And I'm shocked that I'm doing this.
So when you were at the hospital taking care of him, I think it was like a year and a half or something he spent at the hospital, right? It was quite some time. So there was no conversation around all these businesses that he owned and, hey, these are the companies, this is what we're doing with them, these are the products that we offer, or anything like that?
That's the crazy part. So he spent 352 nights in the hospital, and never one night alone. It was between me, my mom, and my brother. We just spent all nights with him. And we'd be up all night because he'd have these night sweats and we'd have to switch out his bed. And never once in all of that time did he say, hey, Amanda, here are my companies. Here's who runs my companies. This is what I'd like to see from my companies. We never had that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's somewhere on one of the interviews I listened to, there was actually a book that he was working on while he was at the hospital.
Yeah, so he got really into alternative medicine because we were looking for a cure for him. And he actually started writing a blog. And in 2 months, it was supposed to be just for friends and family, a CaringBridge site. And he got 60,000 readers to read this thing. He didn't mean for anybody to read it, but then because he was so open about here's what's going on with me, here's the alternative routes I'm trying, here's the emotional things that I'm working on, and it started to get a bit heated, so we stopped because people were yelling at him for doing different things, and it was too intense. But that's what sparked this idea of, I should write a book about everything that I've learned. So he was actually working on a book around wellness and health right before he passed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously, I don't know, I'm pretty sure many of my listeners who are listening to this, they've all probably have seen or at least have read The Ultimate Sales Machine, right? So that book has been around forever. It's nearly 50-year-old, right? How old is that?
15, 15.
15, okay, yeah. So it's a very old book. I've read it ages ago. I remember reading it and read some of the concepts. And even though it kind of talked about sales, it was mostly a lot of marketing tactics from the old days. So obviously there's a big why, right? The company has very successful following and your dad has built an amazing company, but you have your own personal why. What's the drive behind you? What keeps you motivated and keep going?
So there was a moment in the hospital where he did his bone marrow transplant. He had leukemia, and so he was confined to this small cancer floor, and specifically in his room. He wasn't allowed to leave his room for 2 months. And my father was larger than life. You know, he traveled around the world working with the biggest of companies. He was very strong-willed man. So to confine him like that and quarantine him like that was really difficult on him. And I can remember walking in one day and he was looking out the window and he looked rather pensive, and I asked him, you know, what's going on? And he said, "For all the wealth I've amassed, nothing can buy my way out of this hospital room."
Mm-hmm.
And I never forgot that moment. That was a huge reason why I thought I don't think I could step into this business. I don't think I could continue it on because, you know, I saw what happened to my father. And I actually study under an Indian saint. I call her Guruji, Sarvalokama Guruji Punamji. And she was the one actually that said, you can take over the business. It's just, you have to come at it from a different way. You don't have to be stressful. You don't have to do it in pressure. You don't have to do it in anger. You can just do it with ease and humility and service and gratitude. And so it's my mission. Since I couldn't save my father, my why is really, how do I assist executives, entrepreneurs to grow their business without having to sacrifice their life, right? So how to double their sales while cutting their stress in half. And we have the tools to teach people how to work smarter, right? You don't have to do double the amount of work to double your sales. You just have to operate from a different way and be more strategic to get an even greater result. So I pride myself in really focusing on how do we grow the person as a whole and help them have what I called the final chapter, how to have a rich and full life.
Which I really want to geek out and go into some of the concepts that you teach, and obviously some of the principles from your dad's earlier version of it as well. So, you know, you, like at 25, you have this business with hundreds of employees, and you're in a knowledge business, right? So it's not even like a product that you just, you know, make a machine just produce it out. So you're teaching and training and coaching people to improve their skills and improve their companies. So how did that knowledge transfer happen where, you know, there was never a conversation about the business or the finances or anything? How did you start to learn what the business is and learn the sales techniques and tactics that your dad was teaching across the globe? 15 languages or something the book was translated to.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I did exactly what all of our clients do. I picked up the book. I read it over and over and over again. He has training programs and videos. We have courses. I watched them over and over and over again. I read his emails over and over and over again. I listened. I asked a ton of questions. And then a huge part of all of that was still the mental aspect. So my father had the doubling of the sales techniques. My guru helped me with my mind. So the limiting beliefs of, you're a singer, you're not a revenue generating consultant. Like, there's a very difference there. But once I could get through the chatter that told me I couldn't, then the roadmap was already there. I just had to follow those steps. So for instance, my father used to give a talk on the 4 ways to double your sales. So all of the scripts were there. It's just it needed someone to present them. And while I felt at first, I was 26 when I started doing these presentations. And I thought, wow, well, I'm only 26. I haven't done any of this. How can I stand in front of 400 CEOs and tell them this is how you double your sales? But some gusto in me still did it, which was, I still look back and I'm like, that was shocking. I can't believe I did that. But it was still true. Regardless, it had been proven. I was just a steward. I was just the catalyst to assist, to bring that message from my father to the next group of business owners. So I was doing webinars, selling one-to-many, like 400 CEOs on a call. And here I am, 26-year-old. This is how you double your sales. But we managed to double our coaching clients multiple years in a row using that format. And the only thing I think that I got from my singing days is that I'm very comfortable in front of a crowd. It's most home to me to be on a stage. And I love to entertain. So I had my father's methodology, but if I can entertain them and get them engaged and have some fun while we're doing it, then some magic can happen. So
Yeah, I was actually at Inbound when you did your session. I think I would have to say that was the only session I ever learned something at Inbound. And usually they don't have a ton of sessions on actual sales, right? Most of the conversations around like marketing and technical knowledge. But it was one, and I saw Chet Holmes' daughter's name on there. I said, I'm going to that session. So that's how I ended up meeting you in person. But one thing is to regurgitate. The other thing is to understand the concept and really believe what you're saying. So, like, how did that happen though? Because you had to see some of the principles being applied in your own company and seeing the fruits of it, right? So, can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I have over the last decade, but I think, luckily, because I was around my father my whole life, I watched him do this. I sat in on client meeting or like dinners with clients. He was always giving business advice. Like the person at the register at Rite Aid says that they have a side hustle. My father starts trying to figure out the Dream 100 for them. And hey, you could do this and this. We're sitting at dinner at a nice restaurant and they're worried about it going out of business. My father's, well, you got to do a direct mail campaign and do this, So I perpetually was around that. So for me, his methodology was obvious because I've been watching him do it my whole life. It was actually interesting. The adverse happened when I came into the real world and realized, wow, businesses don't do anything near what my father teaches. So it was actually shocking for me to say, even looking at some of our staff that had been around for several years in the organization. And to me, it's so obvious how my father's methodologies apply to what we're doing, but because they were still trying to learn it and they never saw it before, they just read it in the book. They went, oh, okay, how would that apply? So I think I just by osmosis, that really definitely helped without like the absolute, like, here's my business and here's what I do. When I was a singer and put up my first website, he was guiding me on how to put up my website. When I was 5 selling lemonade, he changed my sign from lemonade 99 cents to best lemonade in the world. I'm like, Dad, can I say that? He's like, absolutely. Okay, 5 years old, best lemonade in the world. So my whole life I had like the world's greatest marketing selling expert. So it rubs off a portion of it.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of good nuggets there, because a lot of people read books, but they don't take all of it and apply it, right? They get a lot of insights, but the action is where you get the results, right? You can have a lot of head knowledge, but not necessarily apply it. And then, a couple of things that I think, you've touched on the Dream 100 concept. So I wanted to kind of get into that, because I think that's the number one concept that I hear account-based marketers talking about, the Dream 100, picking that and just going after it. So can you share with our audience, may not have heard of that concept, what a Dream 100 is?
Yes. So the Dream 100 is the fastest, least expensive way to double sales. I have a client, they spent $1.25 on their marketing, $1.25 and $2,000 for my boot camp. And they generated $8.4 million in the first 6 weeks and $42 million over 6 months with $1.25 plus $2,000. Like, talk about an ROI, right?
Yeah.
So what it is there's always a smaller number of better buyers than there are all buyers. That means that marketing and selling to them is cheaper than marketing and selling to all buyers. So this was invented by my father when he was working for a billionaire by the name of Charlie Munger. So not everybody knows Charlie Munger's co-chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. You laugh, but I was in the room doing a keynote for Berkshire Hathaway, and I said, how many of you know Charlie Munger? And like 3 people raised their hand.
No way.
Berkshire Hathaway.
He's the second man in charge. He's the second in command.
It was the weirdest moment, I swear. But anyways, so he was working for Charlie Munger, and he doubled the sales of 9 different companies for Charlie, all within 12 to 15 months, and several of them multiple years consecutively. So he realized he had a system for doubling sales. So Charlie had given him a list of 2,200 different advertisers to go after, so prospects. So instead of going after the 2,200 prospects, he was like, wow, that's a lot of cold calls. He did some research and he realized that 167 of those 2,200 bought 95% of the marketplace. So he led, this is where the Dream 100 was born, a Dream 167, where he was just in their face, in their place, in their space. Everywhere they went, he was there training or getting their attention to win them as clients. On the 6th month, he closed the largest contract that the industry had ever seen and doubled sales and doubled sales. And it just kept doubling because of this Dream 100 effort. So you really want to go from, I've never heard of you, to, oh yeah, I think I've heard of you, to, yes, I know that person, to, we're working together. So that's kind of the, as you go. I also want to add that there's a lot that I've adjusted with the Dream 100, because some people get overwhelmed and go, oh my gosh, a Dream 100, how can I even put a list of 100? I would even challenge everyone that's listening to this right now, who would be one person that could completely change your world? Just one. If you have that one, it could alter the course of your life. Can you lead an intensive effort where you are pig-headed, disciplined, and determined to go after that one person, so you are in their face, in their place, in their space, so that you have created such top-of-mind awareness that as soon as they need a product service like yours, they are raising their hand to talk to you. That's the power of Dream 100.
So the company that you mentioned that used the $150 and the $2,000 in coaching to you, like what channel were they using? Because, you hear about cold outreach and, social selling, and you're maybe doing Google ads and display ad retargeting. There's so many options to choose from, right? Like, if you're a ClickFunnels guy, which we were going to touch on a little bit, we'll create a funnel. So essentially, like, what are the tactics that actually worked for them to hit those 100?
So that was Troy Aberley. And there's a great interview that I did with him where he breaks down every piece of his sales process. He goes through the whole pitch deck and then shows how he closed all of it. So what he did was he went back to all the hard no's. Everyone that said, no, I'm not interested in buying. So he was selling farming equipment. So all the hard no's, he found 4 of them. And he did some research and he found what were the 5 biggest reasons you're losing profit. So he reached out to them, just cold calling, and said, hey, we've done some research and we found these are the 5 ways you're losing profit in your farm, and we'd like to present it to you. It'll take less than, it'll take 19 minutes for us to give you all of this information with some data. And that got him in the door. Now, the difference between that and what all of the other sales reps were doing is they're calling up just saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you about your farming equipment. How are you doing? Let's talk about what's going on, because we have some new things over here at our dealership. We'd love to tell you about it. Now, research shows that only 3% of a market at any given time is interested in your product or service. So you'd have to make 100 cold calls to get just 3, right? You send out 100 cold outreach emails. You send out 100 LinkedIn messages. If you are only talking about you, your product or service, you only get 3%. What Troy did was that so this breaks down the buyer's pyramid. So if you were thinking about at any given time, right? 3% are in the buying now category. Let's say it was a triangle and you broke up that triangle. 3% are in the buying now category. Another 7% are open to it. The next 30% think that they're not interested. The last 30% are definitely not interested. So how do we reach the entire buyer's pyramid? You have to talk about what's of interest to them. So that's how Troy did, right? He identified who, which is the Dream 100, right? Who is my dream client? Then he figured out what they really care about and adjusted the messaging to their needs, not what my needs are selling a product or service. So that got him in the door, built the credibility so that by the time that he offered his service, it was an even bigger close than what they normally do. So a sales rep in that organization will sell on average $8 million in a year. He sold $8 million in 6 weeks. A year's quota in 6 weeks, just by Dream 100 to what we call education-based marketing, or what he built a core story.
So yeah, there's a lot of concept that I want to build and to actually get into the details of. So when you were talking about this strategy, it's still more like an outbound strategy, but it was used to be an educational meeting as opposed to a sales meeting. So the introductory call was to sell that educational session. Could that be more of a webinar to a one-to-many, or he in his case, was he doing one-to-many, more of a webinar or one-to-one training?
You can do this everywhere. That's the magic of why my father's book, 15 years later, people still read it, consume it, share it with others, because it's a universal, it's a strategy that it's just the tactics that change. I bet you could use that same thing in an autonomous car on an ad going to the moon. 15 years from now, right? It doesn't matter where it's happening. It can happen on your website. If somebody opts in, you're giving them an education first, right? It can be a video. It could be a white paper. You could have ads that instead of, let me just talk about me and my product or service, instead you're educating them first, right? So it can be, when you get clear on what that core story is, then every marketing and sales approach, be it trade shows, be it text messaging, email, be it cold calling, be it PR, all of them are saying the same thing. And that is that core story message, which speaks to the entire buyer's pyramid, whether they're interested in your product or not. You're educating them first. So yes, it can be everywhere. It can be in a webinar.
Makes sense. And I know there's kind of the core three areas in, during your session at Inbound, you kind of share the three areas, which is like a global pain, the target pain, and then the solution. So you want to elaborate a little bit about where, how you structure the messaging within that audience that are in the 3%, the 7%, and the not in market buyers. Yes.
So my father created that buyer's pyramid, which it changed people's lives. Just being able to see that 3%, 7%, 30, 30, 30. I'm trying to find it in this book. That's how it looks. Okay. And then what we did, or what I did with my team, is we realized, okay, back then when my father was teaching this concept, it was before content marketing was really a thing. The internet hadn't happened. So he was teaching content marketing, education-based marketing, before anybody really. So now everyone's doing content. We have 3.8 billion social media pages today, right? There are dogs that have a social media page. There are babies. I mean, give me a freaking break.
I heard there's a baby that's like less than 1 year old, has 8 million followers on Instagram or something. It's crazy.
So the difference is now we've forgotten. So 40% of content that's produced and put out on the internet actually hinders your ability to close a sale. So we've forgotten the purpose and the point and the strategy for how to use your content to lead to you as the only logical conclusion. So I took my father's buyer's pyramid and I flipped it upside down to explain how we create messages that make you the number one in your marketplace. So pricing is no objection. Very often we have clients that just double their prices because we find a way to better market and sell their products. So what that is we start with the global pain. So we want to talk about something that's industry-wide. So if a salesperson came up to you and instead of saying, hey, this is my product or service, this is why we're so great, instead said, well, let me ask you a question. What percentage of businesses do you think make it to $1 million in annual sales? Right? So do you know?
No, I don't.
So it's actually 5% of companies make it to $1 million. Of that, 0.08% make it from 1 million to 5. Of that, 1.5% make it to 10 million and 0.004% make it to 100 million and beyond. So it's a very small percentage. So what have I just done? I've set myself up as an expert to talk about things that have happened, right? This is industry wide. So you're like, wow, that was rather impressive. I didn't know that. So your belief of me increases, right? And we want everybody in an organization to be able to have that global industry knowledge. It's not about the product or service. It's just about to give them something that catches their attention and intrigues them to want to hear more. So that's global pain. Then we get into targeted pain, where we really want to hit on what keeps them up at night. Because over and over and over again, I will ask our clients, so what do you think keeps your prospect up at night? And they'll usually say something that has to do with their product, which we know statistically only 3% actually do, right? Like what keeps a prospect up at night? Paper. Yeah, paper, definitely. If paper jams happen in their printer, that's definitely keeping a CEO up at night. I'm like,
No.
hate to break it to you. We have a client, door handles. I'm like, I just don't think door handles is keeping them up at night, right? So you try to make yourself believe that that's what's keeping them up at night, but it's what is truly keeping them up at night. We have to do research to find out what is on their top of mind so that we can speak to it, so that they feel, if your prospect feels that you understand their pain points better than they do, then they believe that you have the solution. So you have to articulate it clearly and concisely. Then we go into solutions, because we've hit on all their pain points to grab their attention. Now we have to soften that by solving some piece of their pain. You don't have to solve all of it, but just something that makes them feel, oh, okay, I'm in the hands of an expert. Now, the difference between content marketing, what my father taught, which is education-based marketing, and what we do today, is resetting of the buying criteria. So you could educate them all day long to send them off to your competitor. So resetting the buying criteria is you're teaching them how to buy a product or service like yours, and you want to do it in every which way that leads to you as the only logical conclusion, so that by the time you haven't even mentioned your product yet, and they should already be, yes, I want to buy, yes, I'm interested. And then your features and benefits are easy and effortless and easy to get that sale. If you've taken this whole approach, that's what we do. And once you get that message, right, then it can go every which way, into a cold call, into a cold email, into your ads, into your trade shows, into your sales scripting, into your follow-up scripts, into your referral scripts. I mean, every which where you want to make sure you're following this framework.
And obviously at the core of it all is that core story that you teach. So you want to explain to our audience a little bit about what is a core story and how do you craft one?
So getting the attention of our prospects is next to impossible today. I mean, just with the amount of clutter, right? I said 3.8 billion social media pages. There's just so much. So what's happening with prospects is they're tuning you out, and they're only focused on convenience and price. Convenience and price. So how do we overcome this conditioning of our prospects? We have to get them to learn to like you, to trust you, respect for you, and buy from you. So how do we get their attention? Well, human psychology and cognitive neuroscience reveal that people think in stories. That's why, do you watch Netflix ever?
Not much.
Okay. So I don't either. But often when I ask somebody, like, did you watch a show 3 weeks ago? Oh, yes. Could you tell me the plot? Absolutely. Okay. Can you remember what happened in the meeting that happened 2 weeks ago with your staff where you said you had to do this, this, and this? No, don't remember it, right? It's the stories that stay in our heads. So stories are critical to people remembering you. Now, secondly, our society today has really lost trust in nearly everything. We see a deterioration of religion. We see a deterioration of millennials trust a mom blogger over the 5 p.m. news. That's the place that we're at today, like, which is mind-boggling if you think about it generations wise, right? Because baby boomers will go to the 5 p.m. news because they know it. Whereas you talk to a millennial and they're like, they're all paid off. They're all, it's a scam and all of it.
News.
Right?
Fake news.
It's very interesting. So you have your story and you back it by data. People have an utter faith in the power of science. So when you have your story backed by data, that's what creates a core story. So a core story blends the emotions of story backed by the logic of data to make you as the number one logical conclusion, resetting the buying criteria in your favor.
So what is the core story of Chet Holmes International?
I've been doing it for the last 30 minutes.
So basically how you double the company, all of those things that you share with the data backed.
There's many different pieces to it. So if I were to start with like a stadium pitch, it would be the 3 things holding you back from doubling your sales. And I go into a whole bunch of market data on what's going on with the Great Resignation is huge right now, what's going on with the clutter factor within marketing. And then I could tell you about the ineffectiveness of salespeople today and why they're so ineffective. So those are the more of the pain points of the global pain is more around the 1 million to 5, from 5 million to 10, from 10 million to 100 billion and beyond, or 100 million and beyond is those stats is my global pain. The target pain are staffing, marketing, and sales. Then solutions are the Dream 100, like I was telling you about, right? So I've been doing them all. They're out of order because you're asking me questions, but all of my answers are coming from that core hub of our core story.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to kind of summarize it. So obviously, there's been a couple of recognizable brands that actually use the Dream 100 and some of the training that provided by your organization, one of which is ClickFunnels, which I saw you at that event as well. So you want to share how that company in such a short time, within like 3 years, went from 0 to 100 million in sales, and what was some of the strategy that they've employed?
Yes. So Russell Brunson had met my father quite a while ago, and he learned the concept of the Dream 100, and he thought it was brilliant. Now, what Russell did, which was very clever on his part, is he did a Dream 100 when it came to affiliates. So many times there are people that have similar clientele as you, and if you just partner with them and they sell what you sell to their current database, then you give a commission, and it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for the person you're partnering with because they're making a commission. It's a win for you because you're making a commission, and it's a win for the client because it's what they need. So he found affiliates, dream affiliates, people that had 1 million followers, 250,000 followers on blogs, on social media, that had big email lists, and he had them all promote on his behalf. So that's how he went from 0 to 100 million in 4 years. And he actually breaks it down quite intensively in his books, like Traffic Secrets, Expert Secrets. I refer to it in the new edition. I refer to his story and his books in the book as well.
Yeah, and even on the stage at Funnel Hacking Live, he mentioned about some sort of a social media strategy that he did for one of his recent book launches or something like that, where he had 400 social media like influencers, and then he pretty much did like 400 videos to get their attention and promote the book.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's definitely like doubling down on the 100 to that 400, right? He's kind of going crazy at it.
Well, he also has, I think there's about 30 people in his marketing team. So when people are thinking about how to deploy a Dream 100, you really have to look at what are your resources, right? So somebody that has more of a staff can do an intensive Dream 400. But if somebody's a one-person team and then they're trying to figure out how to do a Dream 100, they can't even come up with 100, but then they came up with 300, but then there's no follow-up, then what's the point? That's why I've said less is more depending on what your capacity is for deployment.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's the execution too, right? So you can have the idea, but you can't execute it. And it's no benefit to anybody.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot that you have to get done, right? A 25-year-old, you became a CEO running a massive company. You have a lot of, building the company, growing the company. There's all of those things. What's kind of like your productivity hack? How do you get things done? Is there some sort of a hack that Amanda Holmes that have that we can probably learn from?
Oh my goodness. Well, we have 6 steps to improve your productivity by 500%. It's all the time management secrets of billionaires. And I have to live by that. It makes a huge difference for me. So I'll just give the first 3. So step number 1, touch it once. So we lose an equivalent of an entire week's vacation a year just by rereading information. So when you read it, take action on it. So if that's, if you're reading an email and it's going to take more time, you're either A, sending them back an email and saying, hi, sorry, this is going to take me more time. Give me more time and I'll reply at this time, right? Or, hey, let's discuss it on our weekly call. Or putting it into a folder of this is something I'm taking action on later, right? So we're taking some kind of action on it so that it doesn't just sit there and you perpetually just keep reading the same information. Number 2 is people make to-do lists, right? I'm sure you've done a to-do list sometime in your life.
I do have tons,
Yes.
tons of to-do.
So every day, at the beginning of your day, if you're doing your top 6, if you just do your top 6 priorities that you need to get done in the day, that helps you really condense into what's most important. Because we can sit there and check off a list all day long, but if you're not doing the things that are most important, then you're never going to grow or scale. So list your top 6. I would say those 2. Can I just give those 2 hacks? The 6. I think that helps.
Yeah, that's really good. And I mean, we can talk for hours, Amanda. You have tons and tons of information and insights. But knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would say keep trusting that the truth sets you free.
Very insightful. So can you tell our audience a little bit about where they can find the book and how they can get a hold of you?
Yes. ultimatesalesmachine.com.
Nice. You have a jingle.
Yeah, ultimatesalesmachine.com. You can get the book, and we have some special gifts as well right now if you buy it there. We're trying to get some bestseller lists, so go there. Yay. And
Yes.
if you want to reach out and say hello on social, I'm mostly on Instagram. And Amanda Holmes was taken, so Amandita Holmes. It's my salsa name. You can find me there, Amandita Holmes.
Perfect. Well, Amanda, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with my audience.
Yeah, it was great, Sammy. We really did a lot of research too.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.